everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tattoo Knowledgebase. And today we have one for the ladies. Specifically, we are going to address a few issues that women need to have in mind. So the first thing we're going to discuss is menstruation and its impact on tattoos. So it always really surprises me when we have women coming into the studio and we ask them about menstruation. They give us this shocked look, like, that's a problem? Well, of course it's a problem. For a multitude of reasons, it's a problem. So why don't we look at the body's physiological reaction to menstruation? Right out the gate, if you're a woman and you're mid-cycle, your body's reaction to being mid-cycle is going to be very similar to being sick, which means you're going to be pumping out endorphins to counteract the bloating, water retention, cramping, the pain, all of these things. By inference, that means you're now at half capacity to cope with any pain from external sources like tattooing because you don't have as many endorphins left. At the same time, the usual ocean of patience that women have to deal with unpleasant things is gone when you're mid-cycle. Your body is telling you you have shit to deal with. You don't have time for irritations outside of what you're already experiencing. That means when you feel a tattoo where normally you would just think, oh, well, it's inconvenient. Now it's extremely unpleasant. And you don't have as many endorphins left to cope with that. The perfect storm of unpleasant. Finally, and this really sucks, if you're one of those very unfortunate women that has extreme periods, we're talking a couple days in the beginning, you're curled up in the corner, cramping and vomiting from agony. That degree of hormone shift can actually cause unpredictable things in the skin while you're healing. And you can actually have ink drift and line blowouts way more easily. You can have significantly greater amounts of scabbing and thus scarring. So for all of these reasons, as a general rule, if you're going to get tattooed, especially for a longer session tattoo, talking an hour to 3 hours or more, try to time around your period if you can, because you're gonna have a bad time if you don't. If you're just getting a tiny little bammer, it's not the end of the world, but it is going to be much more unpleasant. So generally speaking, if you can, just reschedule and save yourself a lot of grief. Now, at the same time, this may sound as though it's some sort of big flaw in the female experience, but everything I just said for men is kind of like that all the time. So really, just think about men who've got colds. The man cold, the man tattoo. It might as well be the same thing. So the next subject we need to address that's very unique to the female condition is that of being tattooed while pregnant. And in this particular instance, that means not doing it. You'd be amazed at how often women who are pregnant decide they want to get tattooed while they're pregnant. Why do you not want to do this? Well, for starters, again, you have significant hormone shifts when you're pregnant, which means you have significant unpredictability for how tattooing is going to behave in your system. However, in the end, that is a significantly lesser concern than the risk of infection. So as long as there is some form of physical link between the health and well-being of you and the health and well-being of your child, you do not want to risk in any way the health and well-being of yourself and thus your child. Now, the biggest problem with tattooing, the biggest potential risk with tattooing, period, is that of infection. Usually a tattoo infection, when it happens, which is rare if you're going to a good artist, is a surface infection. Not a huge issue. It's irritated, it weeps a bit, it causes some scarring, but you can usually get it under control. But there is always the outside chance, no matter how distant, of a severe infection, a blood infection, a staph infection. Staph infections these days always have the potential for going methicillin resistant. MRSA, the superbug, the one that can't be cured with antibiotics. So long as that very infinitesimal chance exists that you with a new tattoo could get an infection that leads to staph, thus to MRSA, and thus to potentially losing your child, why would you ever consider that risk, no matter how distant and tiny it might be? Just wait a few months. It doesn't take that long to make sure that your baby's healthy, then you can get some new ink. Now, conversely as well, this also applies to breastfeeding. Now, breastfeeding isn't quite as crucial because it is possible to bottle feed, but there is still that aspect of health and well-being of the mother, health and well-being of the child, so why risk one for the other? You can wait just a little bit longer until your baby's on formula, then get all the tattoos you want before you have another child, and then have to do the whole thing again, waiting. So those are the main things that you need to really worry about in terms of getting tattooed if you're a woman. Other than that, it pretty much applies no matter man, woman, anything. But periods, avoid them. Pregnancy, no. Other than that, get as much ink as you possibly can.
Motherfucker is on his